Sorry. And these represent issues related to the environment, Chinese Indonesians, East Indonesia, feminism, and LGBTQ+. Today, we are gonna talk under the banner of Dare to be Equal, and the topic is feminist organizing in Indonesia. The main questions, or one of the main questions we want to be thinking about today is this feminist organizing in Indonesia, but more than that, also the multitude of forms and practices this can take. And the panelists, who come from very diverse backgrounds, locations, and experiences, will today give an insight into their practices and organizations, and also share from their experience in working in very diverse fields such as media, activism, grassroots organizing, and performance art in both Jakarta, in the capital of Indonesia, and also locations outside of the center. Today, we will start with individual presentations by our panelists, and afterwards you will have the opportunity to ask questions specific to them presentation, and we will also have a discussion that links all of the presentation after this. And you can post your questions in the chat and we will then address them. And this meeting will be recorded. So yeah, I think you saw that already. And also please understand that this is a safe space and we do not tolerate any form of discrimination on any individual. So please be kind to each other. And I will now very briefly only, because I think we already spent a lot of time, introduce the participants and the speakers. So who we have with us today is in Berlin is Lisa from Sekolah Pemikiran Perempuan, the School of Women's Thought, and with the aim to create showcases of women's knowledge and history in the Indonesian archipelago. Then online with us, we have, maybe you can wave, we have Anindya Restuviani from Jakarta Feminist, a community-based organization that aims to promote feminist values in order to achieve gender equality in Indonesia. Then we also have Debi Timoria, maybe you can wave so everyone knows who you are. Wonderful. From Solidaritas Perempuan dan Anak in Sumba, Solidarity for Women and Children, to advocate for cases of violence against women and children and provide education about reproductive health and other health issues. And last but not least, we have performance artist Melati Suryodarmo, who probably doesn't really need an introduction. And Melati will also be our first speaker for today, sharing about her practice. So I will read her bio now. Melati Suryodarmo's practice is the result of ongoing research in the movements of the body and its relationship to the self and the world. This is translated into photography, dance, choreography, video, and live performances. She has presented her work in various places, including National Art Center in Tokyo, Japan, in Berlin, at Hamburger Bahnhof, in Australia, and Singapore Art Museum. Since 2007, she has been organizing Pala and Undisclosed Territory, both annual performance art festivals in Solo, Indonesia. In 2012, she founded Studio Plesungan, an art space for performance artists. In 2017, she served as artistic director for the 17th Jakarta Biennial. And I will hand it over to Melati now. Thank you so much for joining us and presenting. Now. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me in this session. I'm very honored to be part of your conversation this evening or this afternoon in Berlin. I would like, I think as a performance artist whose main medium is the body, historically, performance art is not very long like painting or other genre of art, but using body was a kind of radical movement in the visual art, especially, and in the performing art as well, because the spirit of the performance art is to present body as human body as it is, not playing a role of others, but representing some kind of thoughts and ideas into one as one compilation. So I'm not going to talk about my art practices so much in this session, but I'm going to share with you what I could share as an artist when I decided to come back to Indonesia. I used to live in Germany for over 20 years. I live in Braunschweig, not far from Berlin, and very familiar with Berlin too, because now most of my friend lives in Berlin. And so from both experience, like being Indonesian and living in Germany for such a long time, and I decided to come back to Indonesia. It was a new start, new beginning again for me. It was a big decision that I made, especially because I wanted to share with people, more people, with my friends, with my artist colleagues here, to empower them and through sharing and exchanges. So I decided to open my studio for more people's activities. I needed to learn a lot what is happening in Indonesia, what is needed, and what is important to be maintained and to develop. I was not so sure because my um, about my perceptions about my own country, about my own culture, um, since so much occupied or educated culturally and through my education and professional practices in the West, in Europe, in Germany. So this made me more and more becoming very careful how to see my own people, how to see Indonesia, how like to do something that is equal. It's not something that I'm looking like with my Western frame into um like my own culture as an exotic, for example, object, or you know and seeing including seeing the social problem not only from the Western view of thinking, but also um, looking at the reality related with the culture, in it become. And okay, better I start with maybe with sharing, since I don't have so much time to present. Mm, anyway, my place, my space, it's what this is now maybe called as artist run space. Um, so it's a, oh, not this one. Sorry. Yeah, this one. Basically, it is a space that I rent for very cheap. It was like a house in the middle of jungle. It's north part of Solo, and it has a very huge garden, like 5,000 meters square, but also like with an empty house, unfinished house actually, which was left by the owner. And the building of the house was not continued, so I asked her to collaborate with me because I was going to make an art space. And then she supported us, and we renovate the space and open some outdoor studio space, and uh, preparing this building one open stage, very small one, 7 to 7 meters square. But on this platform, it has been happening so many things. We have a lot of programs, and it's like in the jungle. And we have a lot of program which consists of performance art laboratory project, which been doing since 2007. This is a program to promote exchanges of performance artists from all over the world to come and to exchange their practice and method. And then we have the Undisclosed Territory is a performance art festival. Normally is happening after the Pala project. And then we have a dance laboratory project, on-screen program, on stage is happening every 2 months. And Solo Buto festival is happening every 2 years. And we also have artists in residency. And then we have our routine program, which is basic training, and then children dance class, outdoor painting, performance art class, workshop series, lecture series, children painting class, and we have art service that is, for example, if some younger choreographer or young artist need to help in the management, our small management team are willing to help. So we basically do a lot of activities that is to build connections, but also to how do you say, in a form of capacity building rather than art productions. So therefore, it's a way of a kind of a alternative education space, but it will be more like an open space for workshops and also like laboratorium. Something like this. So this is our inner studio, our indoor studio. So this is the way we normally, when we have an event, we build a temporary tent to have like a kitchen, common kitchen. So we eat together. We always have breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. Everyone, no one is like working when there is a eating dinner time. And this is more or less like this. We also transform the platform and we put a temporary roof or tent to that we also have an extra space for meeting and seminars and so on. Also workshops. We also sometimes create more like in a form of festival, like in the theater, and collaborate with the Art Center of Central Java in Solo. Yeah. Just to give some impressions of what we are doing. A lot, I think. This was just during the 2 years, like 2019 and 2020. All the activities, also like, for example, it was a nice event with Cine Movement. We collaborate with Cine Movement. I think Ji-chan, one of our participants here, also was there. So here is a dance film laboratory. This is performance from Japan, a theater performance. This is a pilgrim program. So we go sometimes also a pilgrimage in the nature area or in the landscape. Yeah. I would like to share another program that I think is important for me to have done this. Finally, I could invite my female friends, female artist colleagues from many countries to come to to our space, to Studio Plesungan. In 2015, we have all female performance artists whom I curated. This is Ade Nopawan from Thailand, Chahwati from Indonesia, Chuya Chia from Malaysia. So our performances also happening mostly outdoor. Artists can do long durational performances or in the evening short durational performances. This is Ellen Lundgren from Malmö. This is Francisca Retno from Jakarta. She's combing hair with spoon. This is Im Hatai from Thailand. She's crotching her hair. Irma Optimist is a professor of mathematics from Finland who is doing performances over 30 years. Lina Adam, Luna Mai A from Myanmar, who is now struggling against the regime and dictatorship. Meta from Bandung. Permata from Bandung. Sukumvala from Thailand. Sakiko from Japan in collaboration with female artist group Sahita from Solo. Snetsana Golobovic from Frankfurt. She did a long durational performance counting all her hairs, the number of her hairs. Suchie from Taipei. Yeah. And in the performance art, I think female body was very strong in the history of performance art since the 70s, since the expressions of the presence of the female body, female idea, female life becoming very strong and dominant. Through years, because the medium of performance art has been changing and developing, there has been a lot now more openness to female with a femininity or feminism subjected works. But many of female artists also do not work about feminism. They don't work about the body. They think also like about life, about social life, about political life. Many of them are thinking about political situation actually. And I think it's very important for me that time to invite female artists to come to Solo and to perform their works, to give also like to meet and to share their knowledge, their experience among them, and also for the public. And for example, in Indonesia, it's always quite difficult from my experience to be always always to in the like in this dominacy of male artists, and those exhibitions or events that are involving women, mostly also curated by male curators. So I guess in the art practices or art event, many of the events are, like if women gathering together, making an exhibition and making performance even, or female choreographers or female theater directors festival, is always seen a little bit like, okay, we are suddenly like even one smaller group again, And so, for example, in the Jakarta Biennale, when I was the artistic director, I really looked at the number of the female participants in the exhibition. And I think that is for me now, being involved in many of the cultural events or festivals in the curatorial part, I always put, like a standard without being making a drama of it. We have to like this, but just a rule that is the female participants number should be at least equal with the male participants in the office, in the technical department, the artist names, the artist list, and in every part and every sections of the organization. So I think is the way to that I think the best now for Indonesia, like just being aware of numbers of the involved people, and that works slowly. Like in the studio, we always like how many boys, how many girls, like we just from the very small event or very small organization, and then we maintain it, and it looks, it makes some change, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing all these impressions and experience. That was really, really interesting to also see like what are the efforts behind organizing. I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to be the first one. Are there any questions from the audiences that refer directly to the presentation now? We would have like 5 minutes to do that, or we can also have the discussion later and then move on. Or if the other panelists want to add something or have like something that they want to express now, this is also possible. Otherwise, I think in order to keep time, we will just keep the discussion to later. Thank you. Yes.
Can I ask something to Mbak Melati?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Melati, I'm sorry, it's probably a little bit strange that I'm not looking at you, but I'm looking at you now.
Okay.
I'm very interested to follow up on your last point about keeping the numbers balance between the performers or exhibited artists and the backstage kind of technician organizer team in a balance. How is your experience so far? Is it tough or not so tough?
No, because most of our networking here in Solo are younger generation. They are between 19, 20 to 30 years old. And I think this millennial generation, I would say they're very interesting because there is no, there is there is no discrimination like during my younger time, like during my past time. So no, actually there is no difficulties making this, and because we also select people who work here, we give a lot of kind of apa ya istilahnya tuh kayak pengarahan itu apa ya, pengarahan itu like guidance, how to behave. Also like the beginning, we have to respect people. So we also very open with LGBTQ people. Like, yeah, they're very like, they're feeling like home in our space because we don't. That is a very important to reduce or eliminate, if possible, discriminations of gender in our space. And I think everyone who's coming here, they're aware. Yeah. Because maybe Ji-chan also with his experience, we are like more during the cinema movement, there was also like a lot of people, a lot of participants and activities. We've been moving around. And of course, in the technical department, it's still very difficult to find female workers, stage workers or something like that. But we've been trying and trying, only that it is very difficult. But in the now, after this pandemic, we are planning, and there are more younger people, younger female friends, they want to learn technique, like documentations and also with the lightings and operating sounds and so on. I think it's very important to encourage them to try. So we plan actually to make these technical courses, but because of the pandemic, we have to delay. We have to postpone into next year. Yeah, because why not? Like the boys, the guys, they're carrying cable, and girls also can carry cables. I do. So I also do everything with them. So that means like our male students here, they also learn to cook, and that's why we always have a common kitchen. So kitchen is like a place where we can cook together, and then we eat together. We learn to serve each other, and so on. That's the way we yeah we live in the studio. Mhm. And but I think there are so many outside our studio in Solo. Of course, there is still dominations of very strong, because in Solo is a performing arts kind of a center, like a very important city for the performing arts development, especially in dance and theater. Of course, it's still very much dominated by the male voices, and that's my problem here. That's it, more and more it becomes my problem. I see some problems there, and because female dancers, when after they give birth, after they marry, they give birth, and many of them, they stop dancing, they stop performing. And so performance art is also like to offer another possibility still to perform, and to develop a different kind of space of performing, without considering you have to be young and beautiful. So performance art encourage female performers to be present as how they are, no matter the age, the development of their career. So this kind of space is actually is is open for them, but it depends also to them how they want to like encourage themselves also to try out, and to be still present with their works. I'm really like, sometimes I feel quite lonely, because I'm now on the over 50 years old. And only most of the artists of in my age, most of, not almost all of them are male, and very very few female elderly female dancers who are still active performing. So sometimes I feel quite lonely in this kind of environment. But yeah, it takes time. Changes takes time, I think. Mhm. Thank you,
Definitely, it
Lisa.
does take time. Thank you. I think it's very interesting what you were just talking about. The just like the whole being in your art space, how sometimes education about equality can also be something that is not direct confrontational, but by experience. Because sometimes when we have stereotypes or assumptions in our heads, by making new experiences of different roles, like men cooking, doing the cables and all of this, can also unconsciously shift our assumptions about gender roles, I guess. So that's like, it's almost like it's a byproduct, but then it's like something very important. And I think it's very interesting that you use the space and performance art to do that. There's so much, and your presentation was very rich, but just to keep time, and we will come back to it, because the idea is like to talk about it more later also. I would now
Thank you.
thank you so much again. Seriously, it's very valuable for us to hear, to get some insights into like the behind the scenes. So our next speaker then is Dian, and I will, yeah, you should be able to unmute yourself. Yes, wonderful. Okay, so Dian is a writer, researcher, and weaver from Mauliru in East Sumba. In 2016, she published the book Tanpa Judul, or Untitled, an anthology of short stories that focuses on women's issues such as domestic roles, hopes, and inspiration. Her poems have been included in several anthologies. Dian has also been an illustrator for several Sumba storybooks. Dian actively documents cultural stories related to weaving through the Kandunu weaving community, a cross-generational weaving community that aims to maintain the cultural heritage of weaving, preserve the environment through natural dyes, and support women's economic independence. Dian is also a volunteer for Solidarity for Women and Children in Sumba since 2016 to advocate for cases of violence against women and children and provide education about reproductive health and other health issues. In 2019, she became a participant in the Inspirasi program in New Zealand to improve her knowledge and skills in women's and children's issues. We are so happy to have you here with us, and I'm very impressed by all the things that you're doing, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Okay. Hi everyone, thank you Rosalia to give me time, and thank you KAUM to invite me to share a story from Sumba Island. I always exciting to share the story about our activities. And I also really enjoy Mbak Melati presentation. I really like all the activities that you do. May I share my screen now? Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you again for inviting me to this festival. And my name is Debi Timoria. My friends always call me Dian, and I'm a volunteer in one local organization in Sumba Island in Solidarity for Women and Children, or we call it SOPAN Sumba. So SOPAN is acronym of Solidaritas Perempuan dan Anak in Bahasa Indonesia, or Solidarity for Women and Children in English. We are basic in Sumba Island. So Sumba have 4 districts, and we have volunteer in each district in Sumba Island. But before I share with you about our activities, I would like to tell a little bit about Sumba Island. So this is the picture of Sumba, and Sumba is one of the island in East Nusa Tenggara Province, Indonesia. It's in Eastern Indonesia. In 2018, Sumba Island was selected as the most beautiful island in the world. This is according to one magazine in German, Focus magazine. This is a travel magazine. So this magazine says that Sumba is the best beautiful island in the world. As a Sumbanese woman, of course, I was proud of it. But why they say that Sumba is the best beautiful island in the world? So this is some of the reason. In Sumba, people are very friendly. They will always smile and offer the best food and drink they have. And they will be very happy to invite everyone, to invite you to come to their house and their village and share how proud they are as Sumbanese people. We also have a beautiful weaving. This is a beautiful handicraft made by Sumbanese women. This woven was made by natural source in Sumba. We also use plant to coloring. We use natural dyes to color this woven. These skills are passed down from generation to generation. Sumba also have many cultural activities that are still practiced until today. Sumba culture describes a strong relationship between humans and humans itself, humans and nature, and humans and God. Sumba also has many beaches and hills that have stunning sunset and sunrise. Believe me, if you once you come to Sumba, you will want to come again. But what actually happened behind the beauty of Sumba? So in 2016, I decided to join with SOPAN Sumba. As a woman who was born in Sumba Island, I was grow up with the community. I took part of many ceremony in community, and I see a lot of people activities in Sumba. When I was a kid, I used to have the feeling where I feel that there is something wrong with what happened in communities. But at the time, I don't really care about it because I don't know what happened and I don't know how to make the right definition about what's going on. When I went to college in Kupang, I started to see Sumba from outside the island because Kupang is in another island. And I started to realize what happened in Sumba. And I start to understand the situation in Sumba that we have lots of social problems. We have poverty where people cannot afford what they need, like food, education, or healthcare service, or others. We also have a lot of many gender-based violence cases. Every year, many women become victims of gender-based violence in Sumba, but sometimes they cannot speak about it, and all their experience become hidden story in the community. And slavery. In Sumba, we have a local practice where someone have another person as her or his slave. This slave often cannot go to school, they don't have their own land for live, and their life depend on their master. And also we have human trafficking cases. Every year, many women and men will try to get job outside Sumba or outside the country. Some of them got lucky. They have good job and got good income to support their family in village, but some of them not lucky enough. They get hurt, they not get paid, and they lost contact with their family. Some of them even die abroad. Sometimes their dead body can be sent back to Sumba, but sometimes they cannot because they have fake identity. After I realized that Sumba have many inequality problems, I decided to join with SOPAN Sumba. I really want to take action to create a better life for women and children in Sumba. This is really important because I think Sumba people, either men or women, have to be free to choose the life they want to live. Women have to get the same opportunity to improve their skills and knowledge wherever they want. And I believe that I can do something to create equality in Sumba. So I joined with the team that have the same energy with me. In SOPAN, we believe in equality and humanity. As a volunteer, just like I said before, we are based in Sumba, but actually we have friends and volunteer in other places in Bali and Java, and we also have friends that always support us all around in Indonesia. As a volunteer, we have commitment to give our time, skills, and knowledge for free to support SOPAN. We are teachers, students, researchers, social workers, housewives, doctors, freelancers, and others. So basically, we have another job and other activities, and we also give our time to support SOPAN. Whenever SOPAN needs us, we will be there with our own way. For example, if someone or if a woman comes to SOPAN to ask for help, we will try to contribute with what we can do. Like someone that have writing skills will help us to make a draft report. Someone will give their time to search for another additional information that we need to help this woman. Someone will be the translator because sometimes the victim of the or this woman cannot speak Bahasa Indonesian, while in the police office they will ask in Bahasa. So we need someone who can translate the woman's story from local language to Bahasa Indonesia or from Bahasa Indonesia to local language. And some other friends maybe will help us with some money for transportation or communication or to buy food during the process to help this woman. So whenever someone comes to ask help, we always feels like a home that call us back. This is our traditional house, by the way, and with the same energy, we always try our best to help another people in Sumba. And this is some of our activities. We advocate for gender-based violence cases like kidnap marriage and child marriage. Kidnap marriage is a gender-based violence practice where a woman is being kidnapped in a crowd by a man with his friends or his family. They will rape this woman and force to become this man's wife. Some people in Sumba says that this is the culture because they have been practiced this kidnap marriage since a long time ago. But for us, no, this is not our culture because our culture is really, really respect women. So we try to stop this practice by approaching some organization and community leaders and governments. We also communicate this issue until the national level. This is some of the pictures where we have one woman that have been kidnapped, and then this is the picture where we give the document on gender-based violence to the Minister of Women Empowerment and Child Protection in Indonesia. We also promote equality. We promote equality through some gender literacy discussion and other discussion forum. We try to spread as many as information about health reproduction and gender issue in many discussion forums to children, to adults, to women and men. We believe that equality comes from differences that are valid. And we also have activities to improving knowledge and skill of young people. Like we try to make them can design their critical thinking and improve their writing skills. We're doing this because over time, we realize that in society, there are many hidden sad stories. Many victims choose to be silent about the violence they experience. They are afraid and also don't know what to do. So we try to create a forum for discussion with young people and transfer knowledge to them. We also help them to improve their writing skills. We hope that with these activities, they become more sensitive to social problems and be able to make the voices of victims louder through their articles. We also try to build a network with other organizations to be able to help us or support Sumbanese people. For example, when we have disaster happen in early this year in April, we participate, we open a donation and we distribute the donation that came through us to many people in village. We have many activities, but also we face many challenges. This is some of the challenges that often we face. One is, the first is capacity of the volunteer. To be honest, not all SOPAN volunteers have the capacity that we need. For example, in SOPAN, we don't have someone with a psychology background, even though we are often faced with situations where we listen to the victims. Actually, all in Sumba Island, we don't have a man or a woman or someone that have psychology background. So sometimes we have to struggle. We have to struggle to control our emotion, because at the same time, we have to help these victims. We need psychology for victims and also for us as a volunteers to deal with the emotional that we feel, or that we always feel after we help a woman. Funding. Actually, until now, we don't have a funded program. But over time, we also realized that we need to expand the impact of our activities. And we also have some strategy that will help us to create equality in Sumba. And but until now, we don't apply the strategy, because the strategy needs some money, needs some funding to be able to apply it. And the last one is security. Speaking out loud for something that people are already very comfortable with is not an easy thing. We are also workers who often go in and out of the village for our job. At some point, we realize that there are the times when we feel unsafe. I myself have experienced being thrown by stone, being intimidated in the village, and so on. And but whenever there is a cases that we have to advocate, we always try to come up with a safe strategy. Yes, of course, sometimes we are scared, but we never stop. We never thinking to stop our activities. For us, the scare is just one of the small pebbles that we can calm down by remembering the values and the energy of humanity and equality that we are fighting for. And last but not least, for me, equality is about us respecting each other's life choices. So I believe all of us in here have humanity value in ourselves. So I dare you to be equal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dian, for this presentation and insight into your activities and practice, which is very impressive that you and the whole network is doing that without getting paid for it and under like really under safety, with dealing with safety concerns. It's very impressive that you still keep thriving and like even now have this positive outlook still. Do any of the audiences or other panelists? Yes, wait, I will enable video, start video. Okay, should be possible now. Mute. Okay, yes.
Thank you, Dian, for your presentation. I've never been to Sumba, so I really, really want to go to east of Indonesia. I think it's quite amazing how you shared what you're doing in Sumba with the SOPAN, and how do you structure, like how do you organize the team, the working team in there? Are they also those? Are there also the women who are also like first, like maybe the victims, or you know the women who you are carrying or something like that?
So our volunteer, not just women, we have men also that become volunteer for us. And we come from a different generation. There are some young people, there are some that older than young people, older. And I don't know, it's like we always try to we always try to want to contribute whenever we have to do something, like if there is a woman that come to us, it's like automatically we will try to do our best. Like last cases that we have, last woman that we have comes from central Sumba. It's different. Our house based in East Sumba, but these cases happen in another district in central Sumba. Then our volunteer in there in central Sumba go around the district to help this woman, and we that not in central Sumba will help to write the story to the police, and then like we always, it's happened automatically from ourselves in volunteer, in every volunteer to give our best for help people that come to SOPAN.
Amazing. So many women with their cases, they know well where to go. I hope, like to SOPAN, and I think the violence, like the KDRT, yeah, like
Yeah.
how do you say
Yes.
the thing? Kekerasan rumah tangga, like family
Domestic violence. Domestic
domestic
violence.
violence. Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So
I
much
think it's
happening in Indonesia, and many women are very shy to express
yes.
this, even when they
Yes.
are
Yes.
raped, because like our modern female thinking is like
Yes.
a wife can be raped by the husband, right? But
Yes.
our traditional society,
Yes.
they don't consider
They
this
don't really
rape.
understand that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this kind
Yes.
of thing, of course, it probably has a long history, as well as the patriarchy in Indonesia. And for example,
Yes.
like my parents or my grandparents, they were not informed in that time about gender equality in this like, for example, in this area, in the domestic area. So I think a lot of as a young probably generation who are aware with gender equality should also reflect to the history of our tradition. I think probably that is now how do we want to move together, like in our, like sometimes I think I can imagine your challenge, because then um, the uh, the traditional environment in our society,
Yes.
of course, they probably mostly ignore, such activism for gender. And so I think, how is it in Sumba? Do you have like protests from families, or even, not always from male, but from even elderly traditional families or something? Do you have a protest from them?
Yes. When we advocate for kidnap marriage, we have a lot of challenges to face. Like even if for 1 month we stop using social media because they say bad things about us in our social media, and just like when I said before that we don't really have psychology, so we don't know how to deal with our emotional, so we choose to just to not use our social media at the time. And yes, of course, we face a lot challenges for the family, for the community, because they say that this is our culture. They have comfortable with that activities, but here is some women come and say that you have to stop that. They don't like it. But we also try to make approach in community leader, and we try to see the strengthen in our culture, where finally we know that our culture in Sumba really respect women, and we have equal practice in many local practice in our culture. So we use that narration to against them. We use the narration of the statement of that we live in the culture where we respect women to against them. We don't believe, because they just use the statement of the kidnap marriage is part of culture, just an excuse for their activities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dian.
Yes. Let me know if you want to come to Sumba. It's really nice. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was a really important add-on, and I think it's a very important topic to think about how to make sure that the people that are doing the work are also in a place to be okay. And also all the different activities that you say show me that there's so many different levels where like you need to do emergency ad hoc interventions in situations, but then you need to think about long-term education. And I'm really impressed, and it's a lot of responsibility that rests on you and the volunteers. And one thing that also came to my mind as we were just talking, and also when you did your presentation, you said that like, no, this is not our culture. And often the notion or the idea of culture and tradition is understood to be something fixed that will never change. But that's not the case. Like it changes, and you
Yes.
can negotiate.
Yes.
But if the people you're talking to are thinking it doesn't change, so I think that is like where the clash kind of happens. Yeah. So do we have more questions also there were some comments in the chat, I think from your friends or people you know, or if anyone else wants to add something. Okay, then we will keep it for later. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, we will keep the discussion ongoing on this. And then we have our next speaker. Just checking if you can, you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay.
Yep, I can unmute myself.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome. So we welcome Anindya Restuviani. She is an Indonesian feminist activist and recently spotlighted as 40 women leaders in gender lens investing from UN Women Indonesia. Through her role as a program director of Jakarta Feminist Association, Anindya helps to provide safe spaces for women and gender minority. She has also coordinated Women's March in Jakarta since 2017. As the co-director of Hola Back Jakarta, a movement that seeks to end harassment in public spaces, Anindya has been involved in influencing policy and legal reform regarding sexual and reproductive rights in Indonesia. She has been part of a team who work in advocating the legalization of anti-sexual violence bill in Indonesia. Through her work, Anindya is promoting people to become more active participants in the struggle towards gender equality in Indonesia. Thank you so much, and I will hand it over to you now.
Thank you. I don't know why I cannot see your video, Rosalia, but yeah, it's just kind of awkward to see a blank black screen. But hi everyone, my name is Anindya Restuviani, but you can call me Vivi. Oh, now I can see you. That's better. All right, so I'm just gonna start my screen. I'm gonna start it with a video. So I hope you enjoy this video. Wait, hold on a bit. was our very first Women's March that we held back in 2017. It has been, I don't know how many years now, 5 years, I guess. And on that video, you probably see familiar faces. I saw some of people who were on that video are actually joining our discussion today. So it's nice to see familiar faces here and also on the video. But so the Women's March itself, I literally entitled this presentation as we call it beyond collectivism, because I came from a millennial generation, or I'm 31 years old right now, and a lot of stereotypes when it comes to young Indonesian feminists, especially female feminists who are doing movement, is that a lot of criticism that came from us, or the stereotype itself, that we always perform our activism on online settings. They make it sound like it is necessarily a bad thing, but what we're trying to do here with Jakarta Feminist is that we are trying to balancing between the online world and also offline words. That's why I want to show everyone how we in Jakarta Feminist actually trying to reclaim space and also narrative in terms of talking about gender equality, not only in online settings but also in offline settings. Because I feel like, if we are keeping, if we basically remove ourselves from any kind of space or any kind of narrative, then who are the people who's going to talk about what needs to be talked about? That's why I feel it's important for all of us to actually taking up space in any kind of narrative that we can actually claim. So I think we talk a little bit. I really like how Mbak Melati and also Mbak Dian actually talking about, showcasing or actually enhancing and emphasizing what feminism looks like in Indonesia. I feel like, based on my experience working as someone, as a feminist and working in a field where the goal is to actually achieve gender equality, the biggest misconception when we are talking about feminism or feminist movement in Indonesia is that feminism is something that comes from Western world, or it does not fit with what it calls as quote unquote Eastern value, which I feel when we are, dividing between Western value, Eastern value, it feels very colonialistic, like point of view. And I hate that kind of, when people kind of say like, oh, it's a Western thing, it is Eastern thing, which we believe, I think what Mbak Dian and also Mbak Melati herself tried to show us, that it's very contrast to what majority of people think about gender equality and also how it clash with our culture as Indonesian. I feel like contrast to what those people believe, like many Indonesian culture is deeply rooted with feminist value. I think Mbak Dian already show a lot about how Sumbanese are actually very has a very high value of gender equality itself. And feminist movement, a lot of people came to us with Jakarta Feminist. I think this is also one of the things that we can see, because we have more space to be able to talk about it online. So a lot of people think that this is something new. But in reality, feminist movement has in Indonesia actually has been going on for many decades, or maybe like centuries. So there's a little bit of history that I want to show to you all before I'm actually starting to talk about what we are doing in Jakarta Feminist. So I think I cannot, I think it will take too much time if I have to trace back, like olden days in, pre-colonialist century. I think I wanted to start in 1920s, was when the Congress Perempuan Indonesia actually initiated for the first time in Yogyakarta, where I actually live now. So it was in 1928, and then in 1950s we have Garwani, who is a prominent feminist group that worked to fight for equal rights for women all over Indonesia. Sadly, there's a huge propaganda in 1965 that basically labeled them as a communist. So and then throughout the Orde Lama, or the, how do you say, like old order during Suharto era, it feels like a lot of feminist movement or women's movement are being repressed. So at the end of the 1990s, we know, I think a lot of Indonesian here already knows, and on the previous slide, I show you as well the pictures of Marcina, who are actually one of the prominent leader for women's labor movement during New Order era, that unfortunately, and she become one of the icon when we're talking about women's labor movement in Indonesia, and she unfortunately was killed during her fighting for women's right in Indonesia. And one of the things that we don't talk about a lot when we're talking about reformation in Indonesia, that actually women are the one who the women movement are actually the one who started the protest and to topple down Suharto regime in the late 90s. And this is also where Komnas Perempuan, or the National Commissions of Violence Against Women in Indonesia, actually initiated for the first time in 98 as a fact-finding teams for ethnic Chinese massacres. And I think since then, since Reformation, there are more and more and more feminist movement in Indonesia are trying to, there are more issues that being brought up to the movement itself. Like in 2000, Dala PRT, which is the organization that focused, like I think one of the biggest organizations that focus on domestic workers' rights in Indonesia, starting to advocate for the draft bills of protections of domestic workers in Indonesia that are still in that has not been passed until now. And I think that Dian, who is from Sumba, probably also very knowledgeable about Mama Ale Tabaun, who is part of indigenous group in Molo, that she started protesting against mining company by weaving, like, inviting all of the women in her village to actually surround the hill where the mining company is located to weave. So I think it's a very interesting, like we can see a lot of different way of how feminists are actually doing movement in Indonesia. And I think looking at it right now, starting in 2010 until 2020, there are more movements that are actually led by young people. So with Women's March Jakarta, that I just showed you, that started in 2017, and after that we have more and more cities all around Indonesia that actually initiated more and more movement in a lot of cities all around Indonesia that actually initiated by young people, that knowing about the Women's March through social media, brought up the movement to the street, to the march, doing march in more than 20 cities all over Indonesia. And the discussions surrounding sexuality are starting to to be included in the movement. As you can see on the video of the Women's March in Jakarta, there are so many rainbow flags. People are not ashamed to show that they are part of LGBT community. And sadly, this is something that is not, being welcomed that much in Indonesia. So in a sense, it become a huge backlash, as well as a threat to everyone, to their safety as well. So in terms of we are doing the movement, when we are developing the security plan and everything, there's always that security planning for vulnerable groups, including LGBTIQ community, especially trans women, because they are very visible when they are in a big crowd. And I think other than that, one of the things that not being talked about a lot in a youth setting, especially I do not grow up in Jakarta, but I spent a lot of my time in Jakarta for about 10 years. I think a lot of discussions surrounding feminism in the urban settings, we actually rarely talk about other issue that is being faced in a grassroots level, such as things that Mbak Dian is actually talking about like kidnapping, kidnapped marriage, child marriage is something that seems to be very, very far away, including what happens towards indigenous women in Indonesia. So one of the things that we do in Women's March is actually, and also a lot of campaign that we do, we are trying to kind of showcase, or like to let people to use our platform to be able to amplify what are the other issue. For example, the indigenous women in Kendeng, we call it Kartini Kendeng, who are I think I think 2017 they were doing a big protest in front of the presidential palace by cementing their feet because they are actually doing protests against cement factory. So one of the things why I also talk about it is, what we do is beyond activism, is actually based on our story, the way that we found it. So Jakarta Feminist itself actually founded in 2014 as a Facebook online discussion group. So it's actually started online as a Jakarta Feminist discussion group, which I believe a lot of people who are in this audience are probably members of Jakarta Feminist discussion group on Facebook. So one of the reasons why we created this platform is actually for us to be able to talk about issues that we want to talk about. But Dian and Melati on her discussion earlier mentioning about how it is so hard for us to be able to talk about our experience being harassed and being discriminated, even in a public space. A lot of time we are being blamed, we are being told that like, oh, it's because of the way you dress, it's because you go out alone at night, and all of that is your fault because you're a woman, that you deserve to be treated that way. It's your fault because you're a trans woman, you shouldn't be a trans woman, that's why you got harassed, and like all of that stuff. So we are trying to create a safe space for people to be able to talk about it and eventually find help. But along the way we see, I think if I remember correctly, I think it started in 2016. I know a lot of people making a big gap to us about this, the way that we started Women's March and the way we named the march Women's March. It sounds like, oh, you're just following the American bandwagon and everything, something like that. But I'm not gonna lie, the one of the reason why we started Women's March, because there is a Women's March in the US. What's happened after Donald Trump was elected as a president in the US. But we don't see it as we are joining their bandwagon. We see that as an opportunity for us to be able to, amplify, because people are starting talking about, oh, there's a women's march in America. There's so many posters that are nice, that are actually very relatable with what, like things that we wanted to say. That's why we are bringing that up, but putting into a lot of Indonesian context towards it. So in each our Women's March every year, we have our own demand. Usually this demand will include, ratifications of a lot of laws and rejections of a lot of laws that we feel are, are actually against the human rights value itself, or even gender equality, or hindering us to achieve gender equality. So I think starting in 2016 we slowly evolved into a community-based organization that aims to promote feminist value in order to achieve gender equality in Indonesia. We name it Lintas Feminist Jakarta, which literally means as intersectionality or intersection, because our main value is actually intersectional feminism. So if you see Women's March Jakarta or anything that we do, we definitely trying our best to try to put in every aspect of what is supposed to be, feminism looks like. So we try to involve, disability community to be involved in our movement as well, talking about feminism as well in their own challenges, and a lot of other groups such as indigenous groups and many other groups that most of the time are being left out in the conversation. So I talk about, like things that a lot of our demands. So I think if I can, kind of make a resume in terms of, or like the summarize of the pressing agenda itself. I mentioned like in every march that we always have, a demands and everything to legalize policy and to reject policy. These are in majority things that we have been advocating in terms of doing campaign and also the works that we do in advocacy. We are working to legalize policies and law that protect women and marginalized groups in Indonesia. There are so many laws that are actually right now on Parliament House, on the House of Parliament table, that are just sitting there not being discussed because they don't think there's an urgency in it, or the government thing, it will not give them any economical benefits. For example, like draft bills of anti-sexual violence, which we call it RUU Penghapusan Kekerasan Seksual. Also, I talk about draft bills on protection to domestic workers, or RUU PPRT, we call it in Indonesia, and the draft bills on protections of indigenous right, or RUU Masyarakat Adat, and also the revisions of ITE law. I think in terms of ITE law, there's a lot of victims and survivors of online gender-based violence are being criminalized because of ITE law. That's why we are trying so hard to revise it, as well as trying to push the anti-sexual violence draft bills to be legalized. Because right now in Indonesia, the legal terms or the law itself does not consider online gender-based violence as one of the types of gender-based violence. So if they are, for example, experiencing non-consensual intimate image distribution, it's so hard for them to report because it's not on the definitions of sexual violence. They are actually being threatened to be criminalized by ITE law or pornography law. So the second one is definitely there's a lot of laws that are, some of them are actually now a law, not just draft bill. The the policy that actually put harms to women and marginalized group, such as the penal code draft or the rancangan KUHP that we had a huge, I think a lot of this are actually part of the huge demonstration in 2019, the reformasi di korupsi or the corrupted reformation. And also there is a draft bill of family resilience or the RU Ketahanan Keluarga that actually trying to define, trying to bring back the conservative definitions of what family is. And also the omnibus law itself. And there are a lot of local law that are very problematic. One of them is the local law against sexual deviance. So they're trying to criminalize LGBTIQ. This is in West Java. There are other things aside of law that we are trying to advocate and campaign as well, is to provide protections and services for women and marginalized groups, specifically on gender-based violence. And we are trying to advocate on comprehensive education information service about sexual and reproductive health and rights, and definitely trying to increase women's and marginalized group representative in many sectors. This is also very important when Mbak Melati mentioned the way that she tried to, make all of her team are women, part of LGBTIQ group, including the marginalized group in every step of the way when we are actually doing something, I think is also very important. And I think one of the main important thing when we are talking about intersectional feminism is that when we definitely give our solidarity with other marginalized group and movements such as Papua, labor workers, indigenous group, and many other movements in Indonesia. So these are some of the things that we do in Jakarta Feminist. So definitely, because we are talking about collectivism, we are definitely using our social media. And this is also one of the things that I think one of the main success of Women Smart Jakarta and any other activity that we do is that we are promoting everything through social media. There's actually a very good benefit of social media aside of the hate speech that sometimes I get. But yeah, we are promoting feminist value by maximizing the utilizations of social media, not just posting, but actually innovating with a lot of features that we can try our best to maximize those filters, like IG filter. If you're on TikTok or in IG you're using Reels, we're trying to keep up with everything that is happening in the world right now. Of course, we have our annual protest of Women Smart Jakarta that has gathered at least 5,000 people march for gender equality since 2017, and there is also annual protest of Women's March in Indonesia that has created a network of 20 cities all over Indonesia to march for gender equality since 2018, and it's spread across from Aceh. I think the most east is right now is in, I think it's in Sumba actually. Or in Kupang, I forgot. But I think it's also in NTT. But there's a lot. So yeah, so we are trying to create this network of Women's March in Indonesia itself, and a lot of people who are behind Women's March, behind our campaign or our advocacy are actually, a lot of them are young people. So other than that, we do a lot of educational event and also project as well. We have Feminist Festival, the annual event since 2017 as a platform to learn about feminism and its intersectionality. We also do a lot of training on feminist issue, including SOGSJ, SRHR, gender-based violence, and also many more. We talk about Women's March Indonesia Network. We also have a network in Southeast Asia. We call it Southeast Asia Feminist Action Movement Network that is across Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. We are actually providing capacity building for grassroots feminist activists. So Diana actually mentioning about, how hard it is for them to be able to kind of, maintain their own, how do you say, mental health when they are talking to survivors and victims of gender-based violence. This is one of the things that we also provide to grassroots feminist activists. So Diane, if you want to, reach out to me after this, I'll be definitely happy to put you in one of the, the class or the activity that we do with CFEM and also Women's March, because we have, peer counselor as well, or professional counselor as well, to be able for you to be able to kind of, have some kind of a mental health, a capacity building to continue your work. So Other than that, we do a lot of other capacity building like communication, taking photography class, and any kind of skills that they need to actually um, help them to not for them personally, but also for the movement in general. And we have a lot of monthly public discussion on feminist and intersectionality issue. I think this week we're going to have a discussion with young indigenous groups in Indonesia on IGTV, if I'm not mistaken. And also we have a lot of educational infographic content on social media. I think this month we reach our 100th infographic content on our social media, and we're very proud of it. So yeah, so that's why I say like collectivism actually works. Other than that, I have I don't think if I have time for video, I'm just gonna skip this. This is about feminist festival that we did in 2019 because we are going to do feminist festival again this year, but unfortunately because of the global pandemic, we have to do it online. So yeah. So yeah, I think other than that, we also do a lot of research because I think without doing a proper research on data and facts, it's kind of, hard for us to do advocacy. I think a good advocacy is always fact or fact-based. So we did research with coalitions of safe public space where we are part of the coalitions on a national survey on sexual harassment in public space. You can see all of the data on ruangaman.org. One of the things that I am very proud of this survey, I know that this is probably will not show like the whole, characteristic of what is it on sexual harassment in public space, but one of the reason why we do it, because in Indonesia, a lot of time harassment in public space are often normalized. A lot of people, when we're talking about, sexual harassment, when it happens on the street, they will say like, oh, it's okay, you don't have to report it, like it happens all the time. So we wanted to kind of fill in the gap with the harassment data or sexual harassment data that we already have in Komnas Perempuan, that most of the time it talks about a lot of harassment that happen in private space. So in conclusion, with the result of the survey, we had 62,240 people all across Indonesia filling out our survey, and it says that 1 out of 10 men in Indonesia actually experience sexual harassment in public space, and more than 60% of women all over Indonesia has experienced sexual harassment in public space. And recently, we conducted a national survey on gender-based violence situation during COVID-19 pandemic. It is very, very new, and this is one of the reasons why we eventually created another project that actually using artificial intelligence, hopefully, to actually helping people who are experiencing gender-based violence in Indonesia. The result of the national survey, you can visit it on our website. I can show you our website later, but it's definitely something that is not surprising, but also kind of mind-boggling. Like we see there are actually 22% increasing of new cases during gender-based violence situation, and the intensity and also the severity of the abuse is definitely worse before COVID-19 pandemic, and economic factors such as loss of income is definitely, it definitely create one of the main reason why gender-based violence happen, especially in domestic settings. I think my last presentation will be about advocacy. So one of the things with the survey, with the data that we have, and with the campaign itself, the main goal is definitely to advocate a policy. So with the advocating for the legalization of anti-sexual violence bill, this is things that we do a lot. We are most of the time, aside of the research that we did, definitely to support the draft bills of the anti-sexual violence, but we also do a lot of campaign on that using, social media, discussions, and everything else. We are also trying to add one of the reason why we did the gender-based violence data during COVID-19 itself is we are trying to create this project that we call carilayanan.com. This is an we try to create an accessible services for victims of gender-based violence. Cari Layanan, sorry, what's going on? Okay. Gender-based violence, carilayanan.com is a website directory when you can actually find service provider that can help you, in terms of if you or someone that you know are actually experiencing gender-based violence. So you can filter it based on your location, because a lot of information are pulled in big cities like Jakarta or mostly in Java. But with carilayanan.com, we partner with 5 legal aids all around Indonesia, in Aceh, Jakarta, Semarang, Bali, and also Kupang. So we partner with, and one of the other one is in Makassar. So we try to partner with all of them. So when and in carilayanan.com itself, we have more than 100 service providers that is in that directory. And if you are in a dangerous situation that you cannot safely open carilayanan.com, we have a mask address that we call it belipotbunga.com, or in English is buyaflowerpot.com. So when you look at the history, when people look at the history, they will only think that you are actually trying to buy a flower face. So yeah, so like that's what we are trying to do. The artificial intelligence part is that right now we are developing a Twitter bot that will pick up people tweeting when they are looking for help, using several keywords. So that's what we are trying to develop right now, not only in Twitter, but also on Facebook. And of course, we are still advocating for the revisions of the Penal Code draft together with national coalitions on the Penal Code. Actually, there's a lot of things that we do. I'm quite surprised. So lastly is that we are actually also conducting fundraising to assist the most vulnerable group, especially during COVID-19, because as we know that Indonesia are not the best in responding in COVID-19, let alone responding towards women's and vulnerable groups' needs during the global pandemic itself. In 2020, which is at the first years of the pandemic, our fundraising raised more than 65 million rupiah and distributed to more than 100 individuals, that mostly are women and other vulnerable groups such as LGBTIQ community, refugees, women who work in informal sectors, women as a head of family, and many others. And currently we are still doing fundraising right now, but until now, since July 2021, we have collected around 170 million rupiah and distributed to more than 400 individuals all across Indonesia, so not only in Jakarta. So if you really want to check out more about our work, if you don't think everything that I said is enough, because I think I talk too fast and a lot, you are welcome to visit our website. We have jakartafeminist.com, we have cfem.net, we have carilayanan.com, and of course we have our social media. And if you have questions, if you want to do a partnership, just send us an email at info@jakartafeminist.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this. This is, yeah, I'm very impressed, and it's really a lot. You're not talking too fast. We're understanding you. Audiences in Berlin, you can also ask a question. You could just have to get up and move to the chair with the microphone next to Lisa. So if you would like to participate in the discussion, yes, exactly there, then you can also. And if anyone from the other participants or in the online audience wants to comment direct or ask a question directly on what we just heard, you can do so now, and I can allow you to unmute yourself and start the video. If there are questions, you can do that. There are a lot of comments in the chat thanking you for the presentation. And yeah.
And thank you for explaining what omnibus law is, Rosalia.
I mean, I copy pasted it. These are not my
But it's a great explanation.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of context. Yeah, I think it's interesting in the omnibus law, just like by reading this and thinking about it again, how so often like capitalist desires come with problematics for conditions of life, basically for women. Yeah. That's happens a lot, and it's important to address that. Diane, did you want to say something? I just saw you.
Okay. Yes, thanks.
Sorry,
Thanks,
my cat
Vivi.
is joining.
Yes, it's a cute cat. Thanks, Vivi, to sharing us with your presentation. It's really give a lot of information for me, and I think for some of the participants. And I like to work together with you and the organization to, like, maybe you can help us to improve our knowledge, our skills, because that's what we need in Sumba. We have a local movement, but actually we also need more knowledge about this gender movement.
Yay, definitely. I mean, I already have your email, so I can just email
Yes.
you about more details. I'm
Yes.
so glad that we're making networks here, despite we're doing this online.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely all about the networks and connections, because it's not such a big task with so many dimensions that it definitely cannot be done alone. I see someone. Yes, hello, Ariel. You need to unmute.
I think the festival need to unmute it.
Yes, yes. We can't hear you now.
Hi,
Yep.
Okay. Yes.
check 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. I mean, like before I ask questions, I would like to, on behalf of the festival, also thank you for all powerful spirits that speak today. I mean, I know Lisa hasn't speak, but I also thank you as well. Yeah, exactly. Like the maybe the first. It's not a question. It's just like maybe ask for suggestions, because Soy Division, we are a collective of Indonesian diaspora here, and the question is rather how if this is not specific to one, everyone can answer, because like everyone had as a also a lot of experience in organizing or doing collective practices. Yeah, my question is like how can we push like a feminist agenda in our collective practices? I mean, if we yes, we're not specifically only collective that talk about feminists, but of course, like we want to push like of this kind of a feminism agenda in our collective. Is there any experience can be shared, or any suggestion can be made towards this? And the second questions, maybe for those of you who already have children, since I'm a new born dad, this is also like a question how we can raise like a feminist children in the future, because is there any sort of like also experience in doing so, because this is also my struggle, because me and my partner, we really care about this. And I guess here we struggle with some like alternative education or even books about that. But I think would like also to ask if in Indonesia, how is it going towards these things, because I think like also children education is the main important things to start with. And yeah, I think like that's my first two questions. Maybe I have more after I listen from Lisa later. Thank you.
Okay. So if I can answer, I don't know like if this is going to be a good answer or not. I feel like those two questions are kind of interlining with each other, because I feel like one of the way for us to be able to kind of intercept feminist value is definitely through an example. I myself, if I am gonna say whether my father and my mother are feminists or not, I'm probably gonna say they probably will not consider themselves as a feminist, but I also believe that feminism is not something that we say, but it is something that we actually practice, like things that we do on a daily basis. I was born in a very rich Javanese culture and also a Muslim family. With when everybody hear me saying that, they always think that, oh, she must be grew up in a very conservative family. Actually, no. My dad is an artist, actually. He passed away when I was 12, unfortunately, but I grew up in a very, theatrical settings, because he's literally a theater. He plays in theater. He wrote plays and all of that, and everything that he wrote, as well, always showing a lot of feminist value without saying that he is actually a feminist. I, I, like I am unfortunately I do not have a lot of time to be able to talk to him. But throughout, listening to his friends, his family, even my mom, every time he talks about my father, like she always say that, this is your dad is definitely, if you want to consider him as a quote unquote feminist ally right now, he is definitely a feminist ally. I feel like that's kind of like the way, because eventually I grew up in Semarang in Central Java. It's even like, despite that it is the capital city of Central Java, it's not like a big city. I unfortunately went to Islamic boarding school because that is the only school in Semarang that actually force you to speak English on a daily basis, because my dad really want me to be able to converse in English well, which I believe, which I hopefully this shows that what he did is actually, beneficial for me. And despite that, I grew up in a very, like during 6 years being in Islamic boarding school, it's not, and especially during my teenage year, it's definitely a time where I'm actually, my Indonesia call it jati diri. I don't know, like when they are actually molding yourself, right? But because I came from a family who are open-minded and all of that, it's just kind of, it's so hard for this conservative value to kind of go into my head. it's that's why I feel like, and also one of the things that I learned from one of my friends parents, one of my friend's mother, who is also an activist, when I asked her as well, how do you raise your daughter to be a feminist, and she said that, like, how were you raised? And and a lot of friends of mine who are also a feminist that doesn't come from an open-minded family, or feminist family, eventually they also become a feminist. I think, again, it's just so hard. It's a very hard concept. I also don't have kids, but I do have niece. The way that I start, like things that I try to kind of talk to them in a way, and also trying to show some kind of examples. I think when it comes to kids, I think they are, instead of just saying, I think it's better for them to actually look at what you were actually doing. Um, Again, I don't know, because I'm not a parent, because that's also things that I learned based on my childhood, the way that my parents raised me as well. But also this is definitely something that I do, because again, I work, one of the things that we do is that we are trying to also partner with a lot of private sector to create policy on preventions on sexual exploitations, abuse, and harassment. A lot of these private sectors are definitely not feminist, institution. They're not feminist companies, but we are trying to kind of forcing, not forcing, how do I say that, like kind of interject the value of feminism slowly by showing them, like, look, like if you are protecting the people that you work with, you kind of protect your company as well, like all of that. So that's how usually I started it. And I think if you are part of like some kind of community, if you can set an example, for example, when someone making a sexist remark, and then you kind of call out on it, saying something about it, or not normalizing what happened during that time, I think it's also kind of show example that like, despite not saying that this is a feminist value, but this is definitely a feminist act. So maybe that would be my answer.
Thank you so much. We also have one question in the chat, and I think for now, just because of time issues, not because it's not important, this will be the last one before we move on to Lisa's presentation. But there's one question from Shirley that I'd like to add now. If you could talk to every young person in Indonesia who are starting to participate more in the feminist movement, what kind of advice or maybe motivation would you give them? Are there any kind of common misunderstandings in Indonesia's youth or also in the online platform regarding feminist movement that you would like to address?
Oh my God, this is a hard question because young people in Indonesia are very diverse. Like a lot of people, like I talk to a lot of young people as well in Indonesia, because again, part of our work is actually to engage with young people in university and high school. And it's always different. If, for example, I talk to a university, like an Islamic university, the question would be like, how do I come out to my family that I'm a feminist, stuff like that. Or if I work with someone who came from an urban level and they use a lot of social media, they will ask me So how can we do a campaign without being attacked and being called as social justice warriors or feminazi, like all of that stuff? So there's a lot of things that they are definitely afraid of. One of the things that I would like to suggest for them is actually everything that I always say, just like keep doing what you're doing, because what you do is already on the right path of history. That's what I want to believe. But again, I think the most important thing is actually for them to be able to find a safe space. Find a safe space. If something happened to them, they know someone that they can go to. Like, for example, if you're part of a community like, Halabag Jakarta, which is my other organization, who actually provide a safe space for people to talk about things that they experience, especially in terms of harassment, or your parents kick you out because you are part of LGBTIQ community. That's a place where you can go to. So usually that's what I try to tell them, is basically not in a condescending way, of course, like just trying to motivate them that what you're doing is already amazing things to do. And if you're scared of people, calling you social justice warrior or feminazi, it means that you are already doing something right, because I am now proud to call myself as a certified social justice warrior. So yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you so much I really like how the conversations kind of interlaps. We're now going to move on to Lisa's presentation, who is on location in Berlin. And Lisabona Rahman was a volunteer translator for human rights advocacy during her student years in the mid-1990s in Indonesia. This activity brought her into a network of artists and organizers promoting freedom of expression. She has been involved in various projects in the arts and culture, feminism, and human rights since then. Lisabona organized projects combining film screenings, presentations of archives, and women's work. Between 2011 and 2016, Lisabona took up a training in film restoration and programming and worked in a specialized film laboratory. Since 2016, she became a freelance consultant for film archiving. In 2018, she started the School of Women's Thought, together with Anindya Restuviani, Cecil Mariani, Heidi Arbuckle-Gautam, Intan Paramaditha, Naomi Srikandi, and Nyaina Rasyuki, to create showcases of women's knowledge and history in the Indonesian archipelago. And we are very much looking forward to your presentation now.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosalia. Thank you to the other panelists too, and thanks so much for the festival for getting me here. Am I supposed to look that way? Yes. So I congratulate the organizing team for the first edition, and I hope there are many editions more to come. Yay. Right. As Rosalia mentioned, I'm a film archivist and restorer technician by training. But today I would like to describe the practices that I have been very fortunate to take part of in the way that do justice to the conceptual work that my colleagues have been working hard to contribute until today. I believe that somebody will help me with my presentation. Is it you, Ferdi? Thank you. All right. Let's start from the very beginning. I hope it's not going to be too dark. Right. Sekolah Pemikiran Perempuan is the name of our initiative. It's quite young. We started in 2018 by 7 women. All the names have been mentioned by Rosalia. So we come from very different backgrounds. I myself come from like film programming, archivist background. Anindya Restuviani is an activist. She's actually the head of the National Commission on Violence Against Women right now. Cecil Mariani, she's a visual artist and graphic designer, researcher. Heidi is an art historian. Intan Paramaditha is a writer and also an academic. Naomi is a theater practitioner, and Nyaina Rasyuki, or more familiar as Ubit, She's a vocalist, ethnomusicologist, and academic. So you can see that we all come from very different fields, and we consciously just try to develop ways to work closely together, and realizing that the effort to formulate feminist issues relating to problems in our society has to be done from multiple perspectives. It's the basic premise that we embark on. And we think this is a good way to also work on finding methods of working that are interdisciplinary. So let's go to our first slide. So I'll just say next. Yes, we believe that we do have a serious problem of shrinking space and also erasure from history. To just recount Indonesia's recent history, the spaces of expression opened up following the fall of military regime in 1998. There was indeed an opportunity to redefine and diversify the polarization installed during the military regime of General Suharto, which practically divided women into, or feminist organizing, to be more specific, into two camps. Like, one was the demon, or I must probably also add the whore, and the other, the ibu, or literally mother. And as one of the most prominent feminist scholar on Indonesian women's movement, Saskia Viriha, argues that behind this demonization of Gerwani, which was the women's or feminist organization that Vivi already mentioned in her presentation, lays the military regime's fear for political consciousness and radical women, as well as it's a practice of disciplining women into idealized subjects, which are obedient, self-sacrificing, and subordinate. And for 30 years, the authoritarian system managed to curb civil society by centralizing power in the state apparatus, and an intervention that has undermined a lot of our democratic foundations, among other things, our legal system, our political representation, also education system, and lastly, expressions in arts and culture. This anti-communist ideology of the military regime is also manifesting itself in repression of any populist and mass-based activism, including socially engaged arts and culture. So this is where we are working, actually. Next slide, please. Today, 23 years after the end of military regime, we have more laws that control how women should dress, whether or not we can show intimacy on movie screens, and how long women are allowed to stay out in the evenings. This happens on the side of the state. On the side of the civil society, however, this happens too. So we have censorship, limitation of space, and it is done through accepting or normalizing impunity on sexual violence and threats, like both verbal and physical, to women whose appearance or identities doesn't really match the normalized norm. Next slide, please. And more specifically, like if we go to our small universe of arts and culture practitioners, it's really sad. It is 2021 and we still have this problem. We continue to experience unwavering male, heteronormative, and Java-centric bias. I hope you know that Java is the center of political and economic power in Indonesia. And a discussion on arts and culture showcases, awards continue to be dominated by the same perspective. If you're interested, I could probably post some links later to the Zoom chat if you want to know more about all male panels. I hope you don't. And women's names are very rarely on coming into the list of awards like literary awards, visual arts awards, and hardly even feature in indie film or music festival lineups. It is very sad because like indie is supposed to be more progressive, but not enough. So, and let's forget about representation of feminist voice or perspective, since it is even less represented. Next slide, please. So the problem of arts and culture, in the words of my colleague Intan Paramadita, who is the writer, is not really the absence of women, but rather the absence of the ability to recognize and to value women's work. Next slide, please. Non-male artists or intellectuals are also constantly being erased or marginalized, not only from the present, but also from our historical canon. From circulating historical documents such as, let's look at, I put together like a collection of different periods here. This photo is from the 1950s. The history book on the left is from 2021. The literary videos that, it is actually featuring some episodes on women, but they're quite minimalistic. And that is from this year as well. And the white table on the right is a blog that I I see very frequently to do research on performers, theaters, and as you can see, if you're familiar with Indonesian names, you hardly see any women's name there. And this blog has been existing for quite a while. I think I started frequenting this 10 years ago or so. Next slide, please. We thought, okay, what is a good intervention to do? And all of us agree that we need to do something that is specifically targeted for women. I know Ariel's question was about, how allies are allowed in or can go on board, but I think, or at least for us, it makes more sense to start from the women. Why? Because we hardly even meet each other. If we do travel, if we do something, it is through the route of, the connection or network of our male colleagues or family members. So we feel that, okay, that is where we should start. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is how we started in 2018. We came up with a small grant, which is up to 22,000 euros or 380 million rupiah. We opened submission. So everybody, if you're a woman and you are 18 and above, there is no upper limit. You can apply to get a grant in arts and culture. So you can do, I don't know, you can make projects. You can also offer support for other women. Like if you want to do childcare facility for women artists, for example, you can do it. And there is no, we try very hard not to give grants to, like only good proposals that come from Java, because of course, Javanese artists or people in arts and culture are more like better trained to, write proposals, think conceptually. So we try to focus on diverse location as well. And if we choose projects from Java, we give more emphasis also on traveling projects. So it's not enough that it's a project from Java for Java. In retrospective, we think that this initiative gave us a lot of entry points into women's perspective and experience. And this perspective has offered us multiple ways of addressing political and economic issues. As you could see on your screen, during the course of 1.5 years, this is how much knowledge production that has happened. And this happened while the women were working independently. And throughout the later stage of this period, we eventually gathered together. So the one in the bottom that says CME Festival, which is Cipta Media Ekspresi Festival, was our next milestone where we were able to meet all of us and share like what we have been doing individually, separately in our own region. Next slide, please. And as also all of our speakers tonight spoke to work with and with a feminist identity in Indonesia is not always like super easy. And we also came to realize more through these meetings that the feminism in Indonesia is very diverse, as Fifi has already mentioned. And this is an example of what one of the grantees say, that the project allowed her to basically meet other women who also did not have children or, in her terms, childless marriage, and speak about it on the record and create an animated documentary film. So she felt that this project was quite useful for her to be able to give a platform for other people who probably has different ideas about life, but maybe has a connecting condition to her, to speak and share the same space and give their voice to comment on a certain social phenomenon. Next slide, please. And since mid-2018, the grant CME transformed into Sekolah Pemikiran Perempuan, focusing more on interventions in knowledge production through a series of activities like mentoring, workshops, community building, as well as organizing what we call etalase pemikiran perempuan. We use this word etalase, which is like a shop window, and try to separate it from this consumeristic meaning of buying and selling, but rather this is a place to showcase that remember this all male panel problem. So this is a place to showcase that this is how much talent and knowledge that the women are offering in Indonesia. And next slide, please. So what happens in this festival is normally, in Indonesia, we also have quite a decent history of feminist festival. We have had Festival April since 2002, unfortunately only 2 editions, 2002 and 2010. V Film Festival 2009-2010 and Q Film Festival from 2002 to 2017. We actually met during this festival, right? Yeah, and these are meeting places for artists with different identities, joint exhibitions. But what we try to notice and enrich with etalase is so a festival that is not just showcase of artwork, But we try to emphasize more on the knowledge exchange part. So Etalasa is always more focused on workshops, forums, seminars, rather than work showcase, even though we also have work showcase. Next slide, please. So what you saw in the slide before was our offline edition, the only one we have been able to do in 2019, which was really nice. But then going to 2020, it was quite obvious that we had to think of something else. This time we said, okay, why don't we try out, using the internet, because that was the only access that we could have and give in this time. And so the aim is try to unite feminists who are Indonesian speakers, or at least familiar with practices in the Indonesian archipelago, and invite them to not only exchange, but also pull the knowledge together. By this, we hope that we could collectively weave a system of knowledge together that reflects the experience of women across cultures and geographical locations and generations. We also aim to create, sorry, next slide, please. So we also like to create an exchange process using the Indonesian language, because for a language that is spoken by more than 150 million people living in Indonesia and abroad, very little learning material about women's history, women's thinking, method of working in arts and culture is produced in this language. I mean, there are lots of materials produced in other languages, but just not ours. So we thought, okay, this is a duty that we have to engage with this language. So from this pandemic, as you could see in these two slides, that the format significantly changed. We try to utilize as much as we can the potentials of internet capacity. You know that throughout the world, this infrastructure is not very equal. But nevertheless, we think that it is the best way and the most economical way for us to be able to meet each other and reach each other. And so this festival could become a space of pulling the knowledge and a space for circulating the knowledge without, or rather I say, transcending boundaries. So next slide, please. And if you are interested, this is one form of the accumulation. Basically, everything that we did on video were recorded and reconstructed and now pulled in this YouTube channel. So if you feel like going around this channel, please go ahead. If you remember the list of what has been produced since 2018, we have probably 200 years worth of women's history here, but in little chunks. And a lot of discussions on methods of working from different artistic disciplines and different geographical locations. Please come and check it out. Next slide, please. Etalasa is not just a showcase for us. It is also a big place of learning, and also where we kind of release emotion. I mean, I don't know how about you, but I come from an Indonesian family that is not very good on expressing feeling or acknowledging. So this meeting place since 2018 up until today has always been very charged. And I would say it is also a very important place for emotions to circulate. And we always try to stay true, like, because outside we have to be tough, right? Like, we're feminists, like strong women. But it is in this space that we kind of try to enter a space where we can also be soft or pliant. And usually after an intense 3-day, the festival is always 3-day, something would change. Like, I myself would say that after the 3-day of festival, I usually feel quite recharged in terms of softness. Next slide, please, which is the end of my presentation. So these are us, the people behind the Sekolah Pemikiran Perempuan and the festival. I would just like to shout out to Mbak Melati, like, to put together this technical team is really tough, like to find women who are engaged in like technical work and, not like overly booked because there's so few of them is super tough, but it is possible. But so, we should do more together just to cross-resource these people. And underneath, these are us, like the 7 women plus Mama Aleta, the one that Vivi was also mentioned, when we were jurying together for the first cycle of our grant in 2018. So I would love to tell you more about what we do in the discussion. I thank you very much for this chance, and hopefully see you at Alasa.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing. That was amazing. I would like, so we have still one question in the chat. So I'm trying to coordinate the questions in the chat, but maybe we have some comments for Lisa's presentation first. Then feel free to unmute yourself and if someone wants to say anything. Otherwise, I know that because now we finished all the presentations, so we can, yeah, there's a question from Daniel. Okay. Yes. Do you want to ask the question yourself, Daniel? Then you can just unmute yourself and turn on the camera. It should be possible now.
Hi, can you listen to me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation. Also sharing the content is very powerful, important for me. I'm Daniel Lee. I'm a Brazilian-Indonesian artist, and my story, I have been approaching to Indonesian context because of the very specific story of my life. In later years, like in the recent 5 years, I am a trans non-binary person, and I lived a year in Jakarta, and my context mostly was in Jogja. There, I was always very careful because I'm also coming from a very feminist scholar, gender non-conforming, and questioning the gender binaries, specifically the patriarchy. When I was there, all the time I was a bit sensitive, how I was looking at this society with the eyes from my Western background, but all the time I was wondering how to perceive the violences where they're not saying. I thought it was very interesting what the last speaker just said about expressing the feelings that resonates a lot with me. But all the time I was like, where can I spot gender and how can I spot gender imbalance when a lot of things about gender power, specifically power in patriarchy, is about the unspoken, about the invisible. And that for me got much trickier because coming from growing up in a different context, I was all the time, how can I spot the specificness of patriarchy inside of Jogja, inside of Java? How there were things that were quite on the face, seeing artistic organization that all of them was just cisgender men, seeing very little diversity of sexual orientations, and then also, I know there's a lot of complication, a lot of things, but a lot of time I was like, how can I spot, how do I know about it? Because I think then it starts to get a little bit more complicated because it starts to enter specifically things more specific about the power structure. I don't know if this has already been spoken. There was a moment I couldn't be part of the whole conversation. If somebody could share that with me, I would highly appreciate. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your question, Daniel. Thank you for participating. Is there anyone who has like a direct response to that?
I would check if I may. Yeah.
Please.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for such an important question. I actually follow quite closely your artistic expression through Instagram. I haven't checked out your exhibition now in Berlin, so I would. But yes, I mean, your question, especially about not only identifying the power structure, but also how to, I guess, also how to end it, right? I mean, it is part of the issue that we have to confront every day, and the reason why non-cisgender men and not from Java are not so much recognized, especially in arts and culture, I think is also because making it in the art world has a lot of gates, and it is also very much based on like curatorial, so whether or not other people understands and appreciates and validates actually what you do, like, you know, what Melati was saying, you know, assuming a place of curatorship is very important for women, and this is happening like in a very, very, very small scale in Indonesia, and that is why I guess me and my colleagues think that is where we should start, because we need to be able to say, okay, we have a different standard, you know, we have a set of tools that will, you know, will be an alternative.
I think we have a problem with the connection now.
Their performance or something. So we do realize that it is not a matter of just getting more non-cis men. It is a work to really unpack the whole perspective and practice here that we are about to do. And it is starting. So, but we have to acknowledge that also Indonesia is not a safe place. So, you know, the initiative itself will be slow, but with, you know, happening in such an unsafe place, it will be even slower. So this problem is not, I think we have to be politically engaged, politically active, like what Fifi was presenting. It is not enough to just be a critical artist and, you know, preach to your own choir. We have to get engaged and really work together to do something to make structural changes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that. I know that we also have a question from Shelley for Dian from earlier. So if you want to just unmute yourself now.
Hi, I was just wondering if you work, Dian, with any artists, or if there are any artists who are volunteers that try to help you with your work or to help the participants that you that you are working with. If there are any performers or if there are any kinds of crafts that you use to help the folks.
Okay, thank you, Sally. In SOPAN, actually, we have some Sudanese artists, local artists. So sometimes we doing monologue performance or reading poetry together. It's it looks like we try to healing ourselves, our communities through monologue or through reading poetry together. But actually, for the famous one or big artists, we don't have a network with that kind of artists. So yes, we hope that maybe Mbak Melati or some other person can come to Sumba. So we actually really want to create an art campaign because it it will be interesting with the young people in Sumba. Yes. So we don't have like big in our that become volunteer in Sopan Sumba. It's just local artists. We just doing a little performance in the city and like monologue or reading poetry. It's just to heal ourselves through art. That's all.
I would like to come with my students and my friends.
Really good. Yeah.
We can put this on plan.
Yes.
Thank you. I think, may I add something, Rosalia?
Yes, please, please.
I want to respond to Arif about, like being parents. Well, I'm a mother. I studied politics before I studied art, and then I got pregnant. I continued studying. I start my career with having a baby. I carried my baby into my performance event and travel with her. Of course, I was collaborating a lot with her father, who is now my ex. but now I see she's 24 years old, and I was questioning, oh my God, what have I done to her? I'm very amazed by her. She's very confident, young lady. She's very articulate. She's very, like critical to see like the changes in the society. She's very she's having an African German boyfriend, and all these things. I was so surprised. She's very environmental friendly and aware. She doesn't want to drive car. She walks a lot. She takes public transportation. I think that generation is born from our generation in the 90s in Germany. It was that time in the 90s and early late 90s and early 2000. We My generation who have babies, like suddenly there are many of my friends have baby that time, and they we are like in the I would say we, because I was there in Germany. In Germany, we really were like in the on the face of changing, where young fathers, pushing the baby carriage on the streets and so on, become more and more and more. So, like, of course, it was like a big change, and a big change and a surprising change for my parents-in-law, for example. How can you let your husband cooking, and most of my male friends are cooking, they're carrying their baby, they taking care of babies, and the women are working, and like all this environment is actually quite interesting, but it is within the art environment and art society, art community. In the normal, like in the common, I used to live more outside in the village. And in the reality, in the common reality, there is still a kind of very strong discrimination between women, even from women. So I was criticized because I was not, traveling a lot because of my work. And then, also discrimination because my daughter is half Asian, for example. That kind of thing of reality that makes me becoming, maybe in my real life, I'm very feminist because of the situation, and facing a lot of discrimination and so on. And that was witnessed by my daughter, of course. And I think she has a lot of she gained a lot of experience. And I wasn't very angry person, but still she has witnessed along her life. There have been many discrimination that happened to me, and many. Although I did not really felt, like that was like um, a harassment or something like that, but it was quite tough, especially like being, I don't know, being a woman that time in a small city, in a small village actually. And in Berlin or Hamburg or Köln, Munich, probably different case. But I was in middle of the village. So I think young generation, generation now, even in Indonesia, I think have a power of change. And through my activities here, I would like to encourage them also to be more confident, to express their voices, to express their mind and thoughts through art or through anything what they do. And I think this kind of freedom of expression is still an issue in Indonesia, especially in the art. And how, like um, feminine presence, female presence in the art is still being, how do you say, valued by male dominating perspective. So I think being as parents, woman, mother, and at the same time, actually, is quite interesting for me for my own life. I think there's always been changes, and like to see the life is quite interesting with all the changes. So I hope like a younger generation in Indonesia, like Vivi, like Dia, like well, Lisa is a sister, and so we work together and really like empowering our female friends, and that is very important, that the Jakarta Feminist, Feminist, and SOPAN and Sekolah Perempuan is all important. I'm very happy to have seen your presentations, and a lot of, I'm sure you have a lot of works. You have done a lot of work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mbak Melati. Yeah, since we need to be a bit aware of time, we've been all very long and it's very late in Indonesia already, but we still have 5 more minutes if anyone wants to bring up something, maybe also from Berlin, if you want to move forward to next to Lisa and share something. Yes, nice. Oh, hi.
I'm Dima, actually helping organize the festival. So to close this event today, I think I would just like to thank you. I mean, I'm aware I've been avoiding this or escaping Indonesia because of this one issue, because being a woman, I never felt safe. And a lot has changed. I was so impressed. I followed Jakarta Feminist on Instagram, and I saw like people carrying signs like, my body, my choice, and saying things about abortion. Well, I was younger. Well, I'm not that much older, but it was not even possible to talk about it. And so, and with social media and, celebrities are involved, I think there's light in the end of the tunnel. But just a few days ago, I was looking at an Instagram of my old friend who I don't really communicate anymore, but she was posting things about her daughter who's in TK, like preschool, and she goes to a quite famous Jakarta private school, and the post was about her daughter answering questions about gender. And it was so concerning that I was so angry. I was venting to my husband. I was like, this is so crazy. This is impossible. Should I comment something? Should I say something? Because the post was about, the daughter was asked the questions of this study, or the class was, what do women wear? And what do boys wear? And the third question was, who should have long hair? And of course, the answer is girls. And this was a surprise because I know this school. I didn't go there. I know this school, and as far as I know, it's not any religious school. So it was like it was a mixed feelings, you know, like oh, this is very good, and it's progressing, but yet I think Lisa talked about structural also, and I hope there is more to do in the governmental level and curriculum if possible. Because even after I shared a post from Jakarta Feminist, an old friend who's a university friend who's educated, a journalist, was saying, do you have to be like this? Because they're scared of the word feminism. And even, so it's a mix. Of course, my circle of friends are smaller now, but it's a mix of, I also have these, you know, anak gaul Jakarta or anak selatan, that's like, are you a feminist? That's so crazy. And it's dangerous. I'm like, I don't know. So I feel I've been living in a bubble in Germany, but I think that the problem is huge. It's a long way, but I thank you guys very, very much. It's really enlightening to know somebody's working on it, and I shouldn't avoid it. I should work on it too. So thank you.
Thank you so much. If I can just, like answer it directly. I don't know, what's your name again? Sorry. I cannot hear you.
Dima.
Sorry? Dima? Oh, hi. Hi, thank you so much, Maima. I'm very honored that you actually follow our work. And I understand like your struggle as well, talking about living in like a bubble of people who are very open-minded, and like you live in a bubble where you, like for me, for example, like I work in Jakarta Feminist, where none of our, I think like our main team right now do not have this hetero men. So it's either, so every time I open the meeting, I always say hello girls and gays because it's either women or just gays. So like it's such a, like it's a very safe space. So like that's how I love it. But like also, living in a reality, living in this privileged bubble, I feel like sometimes I'm also kind of, like, oh, it's progressing. And then like when you are faced, because most of the time I'm also have to be face to face in a meeting in DPR with people who are also fighting against what we are fighting for. That's when I was literally like, my eyes are literally open. It's just like, wow, the problem is like huge, and they are doing a very sporadic movement in terms of saying things to make people scared about feminism. When one of the things that we are doing in Jakarta Feminist that you probably know is that we are advocating for the anti-sexual violence draft bill. And that's when I also have a lot of experience, has to go face to face with the other, civil society movement who are definitely trying to expel the draft bill. And every time they always come up with, arguments saying that this draft bill says, is westernized, it's liberal, they're using feminist legal theory without actually understanding what is feminist legal theory. When you were saying it's Western, it's Eastern, like why? Like, and they like one of the things that I don't know whether you had the chance to see the rapat dengar pendapat or the hearing meetings. It was online on YouTube. So like most of the time they are quoting Western academicians as well in defining conservative values of family and all of that. But somehow they keep saying like, oh, this is very Western and all of that. It's kind of ridiculous. But somehow I think it's things that they said, it's easier to understand by majority of Indonesian. It is something that is very close to them. It is something that they have been grown up with, despite that's not how I grew up. But like again, it's majority of people, because I live in a privileged, bubble when where my families are very open-minded. The first time I was actually encountered of knowing in reality there is a discriminations against women or and other genders, when I actually literally is in pesantren and facing like I'm not being treated the same way with my male friends, male counterparts. So I can totally relate with your, everything that you do. If like sometimes when I do my work, there are times when I'm literally say like, you know what, I really want to get, I really want to go away from Indonesia, honestly, especially during this pandemic. I feel like I'm just so tired of, the way that most of the time I feel like, I know that the progress of gender equality will not be achieved in a short time, but I didn't expect that it's going to be this long. Like I'm just so tired most of the time. Again, I look at like other senior activists who has been working on this issue for longer than I am, and they're not tired. So I guess, and again, feeling tired is something completely normal. I try to normalize me being tired, being overwhelmed. I have to acknowledge that feeling as well, that I do have capacity. I do have like limit in my capacity to kind of, like dealing with other stuff. So when I'm tired, then I just turn off everything. There are times when I have to kind of let go several cases that I have to deal with, that I have to ask my other friends to do it because I am already burnout and all of that. So I think what you're doing probably is not really avoiding, because I feel like we can do our part in many different ways. Like what you're doing today in KAUM Festival, I feel like it's one of the ways that you are actually trying to support feminism and also gender equality in Indonesia. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's almost like this is the topic for a separate discussion, a very important one, how to self-care, how to talk about mental health and all of this for activists. I think it's very important. Maybe I will keep it in the back of my head. We have one last question from Berlin. And then maybe Dian, if you want to post some information on how people can donate to your organization, or you can share the information later. Okay, so to Berlin now.
Hello, I promise this will be a very short comment. My name is Saras. I'm from Jakarta originally, but now I'm working in Amsterdam. I just want to say that I'm full of gratitude with how Melati giving a lot of young women, female artists, a way to express ourselves. I must say that it was very difficult, maybe even 7 years ago when I was just graduated from university. All the teachers are male, and every work of art that's telling more stories about female stories, there are more personal. It usually be, I don't find a lot of validity that they validate our story. They don't want, there's not many platforms that want to hear, and then our voice doesn't have any space. But then when meeting a person like Melati, it was really an eye-opening that there are a place for stories that usually are marginalized. I'm just telling that what you do for many of young female artists is very admirable. And I mean, it's more, we need more people that take place in the board of curators. And one time when you were in the place of artistic director in Jakarta Biennale, and it was like, I find like there's this kind of encouragement that I need someone who believes in our talents. And I also feel very hopeful in the upcoming Jakarta Biennale. There are all female curator board, and I see that there will be a lot of progress, hopefully in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saras. I miss you. Saras is in Holland now, in Amsterdam, so far away. Thank you, Saras. Take care.
Thank you so much. It was such a beautiful, beautiful statement and reinforcement of the importance of all these things. Dian, do you want to share something or?
Thank you for thank you for who wants to donate to us. Actually, we don't have the link like that will be connect to one website or blog because we lack of capacity of our volunteers to do that. So usually we just post a poster in our Facebook and Instagram. So maybe later I will post, I will tag to you, Rosalia, and then you can research. Yes.
Wonderful. We will share it. Okay. I know there's so much more to say. I feel it hurts me to cut the conversation here, but I hope that we all will meet each other again in different contexts, in different projects. I think it was amazing to learn about the variety of practices and yeah, that our paths will cross again at some point. Thank you so much also to the whole KAUM festival team for organizing this, especially the technology situation, which is really amazing that it worked out with only a few buts. So thank you so much for this. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you for being here and making the world a better place every day. And yeah, thank you so much and have a great day, night, morning, wherever you are in the world, and see you again.
All right. Thank you so much, Rosalia. You've been doing such an amazing job.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone
Thank
in
you,
the
Mama
Berlin.
Lati. Thank
Stay
you.